Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about the one real root cause of Sibo, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This is something that most people have and they don't realize, but if you have pretty continuous gas and bloating, digestive issues, you most likely have Sibo, or at least a degree of Sibo. The first thing I want to say is the breath test that you get done. It's usually where they make you ingest some sort of sugar like lactulose. This sugar, they will choose a sugar that will feed the type of bacteria that they think you might have. And then if this feeds the bacteria will produce gas, which absorbs into the bloodstream and then kind of disperses out through the lungs. And then the breath test will either give you a positive or negative. Breath tests are pretty inaccurate, and I'm actually sharing a blog post on my new membership platform explaining exactly why and explaining a lot of information about Sibo that you have not heard anywhere else. And today I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight into the real cause of Sibo, and a cause that most people, again, are not telling you about. So when you have a perfectly functioning body or system, you're going to have good gut, like a balanced gut-brain connection and good vagal motor nerve outflow. So you're going to have the vagus nerve in your brain firing to your digestive system continuously when you eat a meal. It tells your body to release enzymes. It tells your stomach to release acid. It tells your digestive system to do its peristaltic motion, which is like a downward kind of like movement that moves your food and stool, combined the two words, your food and stool through the colon. It moves bacteria through the colon. It gets your supplements transported through the colon, etc. So this downward motion or motility is very, very important. And so your vagus nerve, the gut-brain connection, that stimulates all of that, especially when you're coming to eat. When you smell food, when you are breathing in food, when you start to chew your food, that signals your brain to signal the vagus nerve to kind of work on your digestive system. There are a couple things that happen that make this vagus nerve fire poorly and have poor outflow, which then leads to Sibo. The real root cause of Sibo stems from a broken gut-brain connection or poor vagal motor nerve outflow. No one tells you this. They all just give you kind of like beating around the bush, candida, or, you don't have enough enzymes or enough probiotics. They really simplify it to different reasons why you have Sibo, when really the only and one real reason why you have Sibo and why you might have candida and other imbalances is poor vagal motor nerve outflow. So poor gut-brain connection. A few things trigger this vagus nerve to stop firing correctly over time. The most important that I see is chronic stress. When you are chronically stressed, you elevate your cortisol levels, you shift your immune system from a Th1 balanced immune system to a Th2 dominant system. If you don't know much about Th1 and Th2, I will try to link my article down below that I've written on Th1 and Th2 autoimmunity, which might help explain things a little bit further for you. But when you have Th2 dominance in the body, you end up with chronic inflammation, and sort of like this tissue destructive process. When you have chronic inflammation in the system, you end up with brain inflammation. Excuse me. And when you have brain inflammation, you end up with poor pontomedullary reticular formation and poor cerebral cortex outflow, poor vagal motor nerve outflow. You just end up with an underfunctioning brain. You have anxiety, you get depression, you get all sorts of symptoms when you have chronic inflammation in the body. So chronic stress is a huge factor. The other thing that I see is brain injury or trauma. If you've ever had a concussion, or if you've ever fallen on your head, or you've gotten some kind of brain injury, punched in the head, something like that, that creates brain inflammation, which is chronic because you'll have tissue destruction in the brain, and your immune system comes into that area to heal that area, and it leads to chronic inflammation. Your body creates inflammation when it's trying to heal something. When you have chronic inflammation in the brain, again, it brings us back to that vagus nerve having poor vagal motor nerve outflow. A couple other things that lead to this, poor outflow would be infection. So if you have chronic viruses or chronic, say, candida overgrowth or parasitic overgrowth, this further drives brain inflammation, which then, again, affects your vagus nerve. when you have candida and chronic infections, and you can't clear it, so you say you do a candida cleanse and it returns, or you do antibiotics and it returns. If you have a returning infection, it means that your immune system is probably more Th2 dominant. If you're more Th2 dominant, you're probably, your immune system, your Th1 immune system, which is what scans the body for viruses and pathogens and fights it off, is too suppressed. So you're not having this balancing of pathogens within the system, and so it leads to chronic overgrowth, yeast infections, urinary tract infections, upper respiratory tract infections, etc. So having chronic infection, whether it's from virus, pathogen, parasite, it leads to chronic inflammation in the system again, and this then leads to brain inflammation. So this is kind of like a loop as well, because if you have poor vagal motor nerve outflow, it means you're not going to digest your food well, you're not going to have that downward peristalsis, you're not going to have enough enzymes, etc. Having this leads to overgrowth as well, which can then lead to more poor vagal motor nerve outflow. So I hope you're following this. There's a lot of factors that can trigger this poor nerve function. Also, if you have really bad posture, you might need chiropractics to help kind of stimulate this nerve as well. So there are so many triggers for it, and that's kind of what I'm trying to paint here. But at the end of the day, the real cause of Sibo is to do with the gut-brain connection and your vagus nerve. There's a couple things that I really want to point out here. Your vagus nerve will do a few things. So when you're eating a meal, again, it stimulates your liver, pancreas, gallbladder to secrete enzymes and bile. It stimulates the stomach to secrete acid, which is so important to prevent a number of deficiencies, conditions, imbalances, etc., and prevent food sensitivities. And it also stimulates, again, that downward peristalsis or motion. So say you eat a meal and you don't have this downward motion and you don't have vagal nerve stimulation, you're not going to have enzymes to break down your meal. So your meal is going to putrefy or ferment in the digestive system, causing gas and bloating, because there are bacteria within the digestive system that will feed off this food chunk in your stomach or in your intestine, and it will create gas, and that's where that gas and bloating is coming from. And so that's a huge thing as well. But the biggest part is when you're not having that downward motion, the bacteria, the majority of us should have the majority of our bacteria in our large intestine. That's where most of our probiotics should be. But when you don't have this constant downward motion through the colon, you're going to have these bacteria from the large intestine being able to creep upwards into the small intestine, and that's where small intestinal bacterial overgrowth comes from. So bacteria in the large intestine is able to come up because there's not a continuous downward motion from the vagus nerve that is keeping everything into the large intestine. So that is the true issue here. Poor vagal motor nerve outflow or stimulation is preventing the motility that we need, the downward motion to keep everything in the large intestine, so bacteria is creeping back up. When you have a significant amount of bacteria in the small intestine, that's not a good thing, because even good bacteria in the small intestine is not a good thing, because our food digests there. That's where our food really starts to break down. If there's bacteria, it'll just start breaking down the food itself in the intestinal system and lead to gas and bloating, which then leads to Sibo symptoms. So the real thing is vagus nerve. You need to stimulate it, and there are a few things you can do. The first thing that I love doing personally is a homeopathic called Nervinum Vagum. I will link it down below. This one, you usually want to work with a practitioner on this. You don't want to just take one supplement. There's a whole protocol that you would typically want to do, but Nervinum Vagum stimulates your vagus nerve and helps to rebuild it over time. So I like taking this homeopathic, most people with digestive issues should be on this, or any sort of anxiety or depression. But I like taking it for at least, 6 to 8 weeks continuously. And then from there, you can do it, every 3 weeks or so. But Nervinum Vagum is great to stimulate the vagus nerve, but it takes a while. You will not see results overnight. So let your body take time to really rebuild and regenerate itself. The other thing that you can do is chiropractics. They can realign your system and your spine to kind of release any blocked nerves or pinched nerves, which can help with the firing from the vagus nerve to the digestive system. The other thing that I really recommend trying and looking for is a practitioner in your area who can do TENS vagal nerve stimulation, TENS, TENS machine, vagal nerve stimulation, where they put some probes on you and they stimulate your vagus nerve. This works really, really, really well, but you would need to find a practitioner in your area who can do that. There are many other things that you want to work on, increasing your enzymes, taking digestive enzymes, both pancreatic and plant enzymes, but you also want to do bile. Bile is so important to prevent gas and bloating, and you want to do hydrochloric acid if you do not have ulcers. So enzymes are incredibly important to break down your food and prevent any further food sensitivities from developing, and also prevent any more gas, bloating, etc. A couple other things that you can actually do are like abdominal massage. You can go to a massage therapist. They can do abdominal massage to help with that downward peristaltic motion of the intestinal system. There are a bunch of other supplements, but I can't really legally suggest them without working with you one-on-one, just for the reason that they can have side effects and you need to make sure you have the whole history into an account. But Nirvanam Vagam, TENS machines, chiropractics, and abdominal stimulation can really, really help. At the end of the day, Sibo is an overgrowth of bacteria, so you also want to do some kind of fungal and bacterial cleanse, whether it's on antibiotics. Some people will do that. I personally recommend using herbs, but either way, you want to clear out your system from pathogens. And then from there, you also want to make sure you're working on your vagus nerve to stimulate it properly over time. One of the most important things is to decrease your stress, because stress continuously flares up the brain inflammation, which then damages the vagus nerve. So keeping your stress low, especially around mealtime, is the most important thing. Deep breathing can really, really help. Even if it feels like nothing is happening, just practicing that deep breathing can really help to just kick in your parasympathetic nervous system. That's all I have for you. There's a lot more information on my Holistic Spring membership website, which gives you exclusive access to content that no one else has seen before, including things on IBS, Sibo, autoimmune disorders. There are videos, articles, ebooks that you can download, all included. You also get access to 2 live video Q&A coaching calls every single month with me and everyone else on the platform. And you get access to the forums where you get to ask me questions anytime, anywhere, and get really good, deep, in-depth answers. So I would love for you guys to check out that platform. I will link it down below. But that's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it, and I'll talk to you in my next one. Bye.